Let's go! This is your host with the most. It is the one and the only Warhammer! Let's get it, let's go! Alright, so this is going out to the Southern Israelite. Southern Israelite, you are a complete and total moron. Did you know that? Did you know that you are a dumb hick? Did you not realize what a dumbass hick you actually are? And I will get to you in just a minute, but first, I do apologize, but I forgot to mention that if you eat eggs and tuna, that'll also help you lose a lot of weight. Tuna and eggs have a lot of low calorie, so you could also eat some tuna. Eat any kind of seafood. Eat a salad or just eat eggs. Eggs and toast for breakfast is perfect for losing weight. Bacon, eggs, and toast. Now, bacon does have a lot of fat on it, so if you want to lose fat, I would just recommend that you eat eggs and toast, and maybe some oats. Eat like some oats or maybe some oatmeal or something. Oatmeal is low calories too. All right. Now, back to this fucking retard, Southern Israelite. Now, Southern Israelite is claimed, along with Red Ed, that piece of shit, that they had to kick me off of his Southern Israelite Discord because I was saying that Germans had better technology than the English did. That's not what I said. What I said was that in World War II, the British had better access to resources and to American technology, and the British were a lot wealthier than the Germans. And they were able to get better access to radar technology and better access to radio, to the latest radio and to the latest bombing tech and stuff. So the British were wealthier, but the Germans were more intuitive. The Germans were better engineers in World War I and World War II than the British. The Germans were better engineers, but they had lesser access to resources, lesser access to oil and gas. The Germans had to rely on gas and oil from Romania. So that's what I said. And this dumb, inbred hick, known as Drake Shelton, the inbred hick that he is, wasn't able to deal with a real historian. He wasn't able to deal with a real person with knowledge. So he's also wrong about Southern civilization. Southern civilization, as George Fitzhugh has rightly pointed out, does not derive from Anglo-Saxon culture. It derives from the Norman conquest. George Fitzhugh and pretty much every 19th century Southern writer actually did not like the Anglo-Saxons. Now, who actually did like the Anglo-Saxons, ironically, was Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson and many of the founding fathers could not stop writing about the rights of Englishmen and about ancient Anglo-Saxon civilization and free institutions. And the reason why they were so obsessed with free Anglo-Saxon institutions like that, as well as with Sam Houston, the father of Texas, was because they wanted to fight against what they saw was impunitive, feudal, oppressive feudal civilization. George Fitzhugh and all of these later Southern writers in the antebellum period that defended slavery, defended states' rights and the right of secession were Tories. The people that talked about how great the Anglo-Saxons were the Whig Party. The people who defended defended chivalry, the Knights of the Round Table, Arthurian legends, and the Norman conquest and Norman baronial institutions were the Tories. All of the Confederates and pro-Confederate people in America were Tories. They claimed direct inheritance from Tory institutions. But there were still some Whig influences in the Confederacy, of course. There was still a bit of Whig influence, but it was mostly Tories. Hold on a second. I'm going to give this guy a timeout. There we go. Okay. Anyways, but yeah. Southern Israelite is a fool. He does not understand anything about the history of the South. George Fitzhugh said that it was the Normans that was the reason why the South was a great civilization and was so superior to the North. And they claimed that it was because of French influences and Jacobinism, Jacobin influences, influences from the Haitian uprising. The South was completely frightful of the Haitian rebellion. Like, a lot of Southern planters were really concerned. That's why they put in new slave codes. That's why they introduced a bunch of new slave codes, and that's probably why abolitionism died out in the South, was because of the Haitian revolt. But George Fitzhugh, most of these other writers from the antebellum era, they were all saying that it was the Normans and Norman institutions and judiciary reform in England that was the reason why England was great in the first place, and not because of the Anglo-Saxon invasions from before the Norman conquest. And that's why also, consequently, the South was so great, was because it was settled by Norman people of English or Anglo-Norman gentry. Also, John C. Colhan, the major figure in the antebellum period, who was calling for nullification and secession of South Carolina, he was Scotch-Irish, or he was an Ulster Scotsman. He wasn't even Anglo-Saxon, he was an Ulster Scot, or he was of Ulster Scot descent from South Carolina. So anyways, the Southern Israelite is an agent. He is a intelligence asset. And I found out that he actually pulled out of a debate he was having with Rick Perry. I also found out that apparently he was trained in Anchorage, Alaska. Drake Shelton was a trained agent who received training from the U.S. military and the deep state in Anchorage, Alaska. Apparently, it's over there where a lot of the CIA people, these CIA intelligence asset people are trained, is in Anchorage. There's a lot of military bases and influence in Anchorage, Alaska. And I also found out from searching that there is a business called the Shelton Electric Company. There is the Shelton Electrical Company in Anchorage, Alaska. And there is also a Dr. Benjamin Shelton. So it appears that Drake Shelton is not from Mississippi. He's not from Louisville, Kentucky. He is from Anchorage, Alaska. And he is a trained intelligence plant and a bad theologian. Anderl, a friend of mine, Anderl, who follows Drunken Surfer, he just said that this guy was a dumb hick, a dumb, stupid hick. And I got to agree, this guy has no concept of biblical knowledge, of biblical orthodoxy. He doesn't understand Hebraism or Hebraic, how Hebraism actually works. He doesn't understand biblical knowledge or theology. He's terrible. Southern Israelite is a terrible theologian. Why do you think that he gave up on his ministry and turned to gambling and involvement in sex trafficking? You know, he practically glorifies sex trafficking and professional gambling. I really doubt that he's a professional gambler. I just think he makes a lot of his money from sex trafficking in Las Vegas myself, but yeah. So George Fitzhugh says that it was the Norman elites that made England a great nation, and then by proxy, the British Empire in the South. And this completely contradicts Southern Israelites' claims and stuff. So this contradicts the Southern Israelite and what he claims. I mean, after all, George Fitzhugh literally wrote The Norman in America, Southern Civilization. The Norman in America, not the Anglo-Saxon America. Also, when it comes to the English and to English settlers, different Englishmen from different parts of England at a time when England wasn't necessarily a united nation yet were settling in the 13 colonies. It was mostly people from the southwest of England. It was people from the southwest and from the west country that settled in the southern colonies. And they were very different. They had different mannerisms. They tended to support the king and were against Parliament. And they tended to support royal absolute authority. A lot of these people tended to be very Catholic and Episcopalian. Those were the people who settled in the South and became the first planters in Virginia and so on and so forth in the Carolinas. A lot of these people settled in the Bahamas and in Barbados, and they built up this Barbados planter culture that was borrowed or brought over from Brazil, and they brought that to the Carolinas. So it was the Barbados people that brought their civilization to the Carolinas. And then the Scotch-Irish were the ones that largely settled in Appalachia. So that's the real basis for Southern civilization. The Puritans, and this is the great irony of the Southern Israelite, but his beloved Calvinists, the Puritans, and all of these other wild sects like the Puritans, the Pilgrims, they're from the southeast. They are all from East Anglia and from other parts of the southeast of England, and they went and they settled in New England. They actually created the northern United States as we know it. So those people are the ones that became the Yankees. It was the Quakers from the middle of Britain that settled the middle colonies of Pennsylvania and New Jersey with the Dutch, and that created the middle colonies. So there was different English people. Like there was very different sorts of English people from different parts of England at a time before England became a nation as it is now, but when it was still divided into barracks and regions and still was kind of medieval, or medieval in its thinking, in its rudimentary thinking. Those were the kind of people that settled the colonies. The southwestern English people did not like the Puritans from the southeast of England, or the Quakers from the middle part of Great Britain. And a lot of those guys, quite a lot of them were descended from the Normans. The southern planters always glorified of how great their Norman Cavalier origins were. And even nowadays, with the League of the South and stuff, they don't even talk about Anglo-Saxons. They talk about Celts. A lot of these neo-Confederates and League of the South people, they talk about how they descend from Celts, how they descend from the Picts and the Caledonians and the Gaels and the stuff like that, or from the Welsh or the Britons. And they claim that the northern United States was settled by Anglo-Saxons. Southern Israelite is also a Calvinist and a Puritan, or he's very Puritan-minded and he believes in a low church. He was brought up in the Presbyterian church or whatever, or at least I presume he was a Presbyterian. He even talks about his involvement with Presbyterianism. And what's so funny about that is that Robert E. Lee, Jefferson Davis, and all of these other high-profile Confederate people were Anglicans. They were all high church Anglicans that believed in bishops. Like all of the high-ranking Confederates were Anglicans. They all believed that it was necessary to have bishops It was necessary to have deacons. Basically, they were all Anglicans. George Washington was an Anglican. Robert E. Lee was an Episcopalian or an Anglican. Jeff Davis, all these guys were Anglicans. The only person in the Confederacy, and he did not even have, a high position. There was a Presbyterian, was Stonewall Jackson. Stonewall Jackson was like the only high-profile Calvinist in the Confederacy. So, like, all the guys that were running the Confederate States and, like, all the Southerners in the American Revolution were historically Anglican or Episcopalian and English. And all of the guys that were Presbyterian were Scotch-Irish people. Like, all the people that claimed to be Presbyterian in the Confederacy, their ancestors were from Northern Ireland. So, again, that completely contradicts everything that Mr. Drake Shelton has claimed. So, Drake, you know absolutely nothing about the history of our people. You know virtually nothing about the history of Great Britain or of England or of the South. You are a moron and you are virtually a dumb hick. I have to make this video about you to remind you what a dumb, ignorant hick you actually are. And you are not a professional gambler, dude. You're paid by the federal government to be a disinfo agent and nothing else. That's where you get your money from. You get your money off of American taxpayers. You're paid and you're funneled by the federal government, and you were trained in Anchorage, Alaska, and you get your money off of the American taxpayers, okay? To spread your lies and your purposeful disinfo. That's all that you have done, bro. That's all you are. Okay? And by the way, if you're from the South, and you don't have a lot of British or Irish ancestry, you're not a Southerner. You have to have a significant amount of British and Irish ancestry to be a true Southerner. Unless you're like a Cajun or a Louisiana Creole or something like that, you're not a Southerner. But yeah, just because not many Germans settled in the southern states doesn't mean that Germans cannot be Southerners. You fucking retard. You're a dumb redneck hick, Southern Israelite, and you don't understand history. What was that called? The Four Daughters of Albion? Like the Four Daughters of Albion, or the four seeds of Albion seed, the Four Daughters of England in America. Michael Cushman's book, The South, Its History and Its Future. Occidental Descent, which is run by what's his name? Occidental Descent, which is run by Bradley Griffin and George Fitzhugh. All these people literally contradict everything that you claim, Southern Israelite. All these guys claim that the South was settled by gentry, by Episcopalians, and by royalists from the southwest of England. And the Puritans, or the Calvinists, were from the southeast, and they went to New England and to the Middle States. And very few of them ever went to the southern colonies. Like, very few Puritans, if any at all, ever settled in the South. Okay? And like, your stupid ass Calvinist religion or Calvinist crap, dude, with the exception of the Scotch-Irish, there was no Calvinists or Puritans in the southern states, you fucking retard. Okay? And the English are not a monolithic people. The English have been fighting and killing each other for centuries. The Wars of the Roses, the Norman Conquest, the Barons' Wars, and the English Civil War, or the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, and even the American Revolution, because the American Revolution, as we all know, was in fact an aspect of the English Civil War. The American Revolution was just merely a continuation of those effects from 1641, 1642. So, like, when America was settled, it was settled by different parts of Great Britain. Okay, it's not like the British were simply this monolithic group that went to America and they had the perfect idea and designs. No. It was different competing English people and British people settled the colonies. Just like in the Spanish Empire, different people from different parts of Spain settled in different parts of Latin America. There is no monolithic Spanish conquest of the Americas. Different Spaniards or different types of Spaniards from different parts of the Iberian Peninsula settled in Mexico, in Peru, in Venezuela, in Colombia, in Chile, and so forth. Okay, and it was the same thing in the British colonies. The same type of pattern of settlement happened in both the Spanish and the British empires. So you're a dumb hick Southern Israelite. You offer no solutions. You offer virtually nothing when it comes to fighting the powers that be. All of the institutions of ancient Israel do not exist anymore. The statutory, the dietary, and the judicial system of Israel was overthrown in the New Testament. When Paul established the church in the first century, all of these institutions were more or less done away with. A new covenant was created that wasn't completely separate from the Davidic and from the Mosaic covenant per se, but the vast majority of the Mosaic and older covenants were done away with. The judiciary and the statutory laws of Israel were wiped out in 70 AD when the Romans destroyed the Second Temple. After 70 AD, all of these statutory, judicial, and covenantal laws are gone. We are now living in the age of the New Covenant, of the Messianic Covenant, and we are not living in the age of the Davidic or the Mosaic or the Abrahamic covenants. You are a fucking retard if you think that these covenants or these laws still apply today. You're a fucking retard if you think that the English who settled in the southern states were exactly the same as the kind of English that settled in the northern or in the middle states. You are a complete fucking retarded hick, okay? I know some people that have studied theology and they could own and whoop your fucking ass. I could fucking whoop your ass on theology. I could whoop your fucking ass on the Bible, and I could fucking whoop your ass on Southern history any day, any hour. Bring it on, dumb fuck. Okay? So you are a dumb fucking hick. That's why your ministry failed. Explain how else your ministry was a failure. Another thing, too, saying that I only have metaphysics or that I only understand metaphysics is a cope. Saying that I am an atheist is a cope. Atheists do not even believe in metaphysics. Atheists and people like Richard Dawkins do not believe in metaphysics. They do not believe in Platonism. They follow and they believe in general relativity. They believe in Einstein's theory of relativity, and they believe in subatomic particles. This has absolutely nothing to do with metaphysics. Atheists do not believe in metaphysics. Only religious theistic people actually believe in Platonism and in metaphysics as such. Yes, modern science derives a lot from philosophy and from alchemy, but science has since departed from Platonism and from metaphysics. So literal atheists do not believe in metaphysics. To say that someone believes in metaphysics and is also atheist is a cope. You are in full-blown cope, and you are literally seething at your lack of knowledge and because of being a complete and total dumb hick. I think that you're a product of extreme inbreeding and a product of just being a dumb hick from a trailer park. So, I mean, dude, are your parents related, Southern Israelite? I gotta ask, are your parents real closely related? Like, is your mother and your father just literally first cousins and they just fucked in the trailer park? Because that sounds like where you were brought up. That sounds just about exactly how you were brought up, Southern Israelite. A trailer park hick. A trailer park hick. Let me say it again. You are a literal trailer park inbred hick. Okay? And when did I ever why would I ever put metaphysics in place with the Bible? Like why in the world would Paul want to continue? Why would the apostle Paul want to continue the philosophy of Pythagoras and Plato when in the New Testament Plato mentions virtually nothing about Plato or Pythagoras? He talks about Abraham, he talks about Moses, he talks about King David. He says nothing about Pythagoras or Plato, you fucking moron. You're not trying to continue the apostolic succession of the church. You're not even trying to fight or defend the interests of the church today. Much less are you interested in continuing the apostolic succession. That is the primary goal of the church, is restorationism and apostolic succession. If you're not doing that, then you're wasting your time. You dumb hick. Southern Israelite, you are a hick. And I will end it with that.